Hello my friends, welcome back to the Crosslink channel. My name is Daniel. I wasn't posting on this channel since November. Basically went dark for the last 2 months. It's end of January now. And I want to give you a quick update on what has happened in the last 2 months, because I think it's important to give you a little bit of an update. What's currently going on and what are the plans going forward. So back in November, I was basically just working on a new video about a 3D printer. I started also printing lots of things for a 3D printing project. And then something happened and I stopped working on all of the content and I focused on a new project that completely took over my whole attention. And at the time I was debating with myself, should I document this process? And I said, no, I won't document it, because I know exactly if I start to document something that I'm doing at the same time, it will take me twice as much time because of the production involved and the editing process. So I really wanted to use all of the available time that I have in my free time, so in the evenings, weekend, and my free day, to focus 100% on this project. Now, what is the project that I've been working on? I have created an app that will create CAD models from a text prompt. So basically it's a 3D model generator, but it's unlike everything else that's out there, because all of the 3D model generators, including the ones that we have already tested on the channel, they are all based on the idea that there's going to be some prompt. You're basically creating an image from the prompt, which everybody probably already has tried out in one or the other way. And then the model generator creates a 3D model out of the image. That's what's happening actually in the background. And it will also have a texture, so it will actually look pretty nice. And these model generators have become better and better now. So the results are actually quite stunning. Now, the problem with all of these models is that the result is a mesh. And if you know a little bit about how 3D models are constructed and how they are being used for 3D printing, you're probably mostly dealing with STL files or 3MF files. And that means what you're actually getting is a whole lot of, like, thousands of, or millions even, of meshes, little triangles basically, that are all connected to form the object's surface, and that's it. Now, this is all good if you just want that and if you're fine with the result. However, if you ever wanted to edit something like that in a program like Fusion 360 or FreeCAD or Tinkercad, you probably know that this is super difficult, because those objects are not constructed in the same way as you would go if you would start from scratch in a program like Fusion. You would construct everything from primitives or sketches, and then you could always go back in time and change something to change the actual outcome. And that's not possible with these model generators out there. So my decision was, I want to do something different. I want to have a model generator that creates CAD models. That means I want to have parametric models that you can always go back and change specific properties, either by taking the object out of the program and then going into Fusion or Tinkercad or whatever, or directly through the program. But I guess the best is, before I start talking too much about it, I will just show you what the current status quo of the app is, and then we're going to talk about how it's going to be evolving in the future and how someone can get access to this app. So how this works is, basically we have a website, and I'm intentionally not showing the URL because it's not public yet, and we'll talk about later how to get access to the app. Basically, the idea is you go through this website, you are entering a prompt here, and the question is, like, what can I create for you? So let's create something. Create a storage box, 20 by 20 by 20 centimeters, open at the top, add handle cutouts on 2 opposite sides. Okay, so let's see what comes out of this. It's not always guaranteed that there's going to be a great result, but it's becoming better and better. And also the preview is currently a little bit small, so let's try to make that a bit bigger. So we're gonna zoom in. What's happening in the background now, it's creating a model sketch. We're gonna talk about in a second how this actually works. There's gonna be an add-on video to this that's gonna explain a little bit more in depth what is really happening in the background. So that's what's coming out. We're getting a storage box, 20 by 20 by 20 centimeters, with holes on 2 opposite sides to carry the box. And you see the difference between these kind of creative 3D model generators, and this is that we're not even adding texture, right? What we can do is we can color specific parts of the model by giving some instructions in that direction, and then it will go and add different primitives, or different parts of the object can be colored differently. Now, what makes this really different from these other generators is that we can now go and iterate over this design, and we are guaranteed to get the same result except the changes that we are proposing, because we are not regenerating the object, and we actually do not want the system to be super creative, because otherwise the box would be looking slightly different every single time. What we actually want is that only the actual changes that we want are being applied to this model, and we're actually getting the same thing out with minimum changes. So we could say now, change the wall thickness to 5 millimeter. And that's the only change that we want to have. And since this is based on a specific software in the background, we're going to talk about that in a second. This is a much easier process now to just change this to 5 millimeters. What we're always creating is a little bit of a preview image. Sometimes that might look a little bit strange because it's just a preview rendering, but then we are finally getting the actual object. And you can see the wall thickness is definitely higher compared to the previous version. This has a little bit of, actually we don't even know now what is the wall thickness. And here we have said we want exactly 5 millimeters. We can now download this file. And there is a couple of different formats that this is already creating. So the first one is 3MF, which is a mesh object. That's what you could use if you just want to load it into a slicing program. We can do that right now and say, let's download this 3MF file. Okay, so we can open this file now in Orca Slicer. And it should give us a box 20 by 20 centimeters. We can even check that here down in the corner. It says object 200 by 200 by 200 millimeters. It's the precise dimensions of this box. And now we could go and print it. You see how easy that is. And the question might be, okay, how does this perform if we want something more abstract, right? If we don't have these specific parameters and it's not really cubical, but it's more like kind of an abstract model. Now I have a couple of examples here. For example, someone asked me to do a model of the Twin Towers. And yeah, it created it. Of course, this is very cubic, but it's also, you see there is a little bit of green bushes here, which aren't exactly bushes. It's probably just spheres. But it kind of went pretty well. Actually, it created the Twin Towers and even like a little bit of the original window structure, even though it's like, seems a little bit like there's hollow space in there. But yeah, this is kind of a more abstract thing. Still, it's quite cubical. Then we have something like an airport control tower model here, which is roundish, but it has a couple of interesting details like this ladder here on the side and the antenna on top. So there's a couple of things that are pretty nice. And then we get to something like a little bit more abstract or like a little bit more realistic, which is this elephant, of course. And this is where you see the limitations of this, since everything is created from primitives and operations, right? And primitives are basically all of the things like spheres, cubes, cones, and like everything that you can imagine that you have in a CAD program. And it tries to combine all these different elements into the required object, and it can also use operations like subtraction, addition, and difference, and whatever. And that's why it's in a way it's limited to create these super detailed, realistic things, but it's very much capable of creating technically specified things, right? If you have dimensions and you can really describe what you need, you will get something out of it that is more reasonable. Now, but I still try to do a little bit of things like, okay, a dog, that was also something that someone requested. So this is, I think it's actually not too bad, but it is also quite funny. So I can imagine like if you go out and try this and you could actually create a few funny things and actually post about it, because it's cute. It's actually quite cute. But you see it's also quite roundish and made from all these basic parts. We have a little bit of a flower model. Like actually it's not too bad from the top. It actually looks quite nice. On the side, you see, okay, this is maybe the dimensions of the the flower top is a little bit awkward. But yeah, it's still like you can absolutely recognize this, and it is. You can also see here, it is able to do different colors, right? So it's. I didn't even instruct it specifically to do a colorful flower pot, but oh yeah, I did actually. I did make it colorful. Yeah, so you can control that in a way. Yeah, detailed elephant sculpture. Here I tried a different elephant that is a little bit better. So you'll also see. It is not guaranteed that all these things are looking the same. Like if you try an elephant for the first time, it might look different than if you try it a second time from scratch. But the difference is if you start iterating over something like this, then it will be based on the first creation. So the first creation will go into the next step and it will just modify the first creation. So that's in a way guaranteeing that once you have the first iteration done, if you have the first result, you can iterate over that and change things. And you can also just redo this thing and go back to one step. And if you're not happy with the next step's result, you can go back, delete this, and try again. And the results are going to be maybe a little bit different, especially in the first step. What else do we have? A nice teddy bear. Yeah, so I tried different teddy bears and did it all multiple times. And every time I get something slightly different here, for example, this teddy bear is different from the other one. So this doesn't have a face. So, but you can always go and say, hey, this is nice, but it's missing the eyes. So before we spend more time talking about examples, I think I want to talk a little bit about the principles of what's happening behind the scenes with this program. What I'm using here in the background is a programming language that's called OpenSCAD. And probably a couple of you already know what OpenSCAD is. A lot of the parametric models on Thingiverse are based on OpenSCAD, and you can basically change parameters and then get different results. Like you have a sign and you want to change the text, and the parameter for that is the text, and also the dimensions of the sign could be parameters. And I'm using this programming language that defines 3D objects through this programming language. And I'm using a large language model, which is basically something like ChatGPT, but it's actually Claude 3.5, if you want to know the detail. And it's creating this code for the object. There's not even an image generator in between, right? If you just have the prompt, you have a pretty extensive instruction at the beginning, which is added to your text. And a lot of examples also from previous model generations that I've basically put into the initial prompt. It's something that you actually don't see here. And to give them the model a better understanding of what good looks like. So what you always have to do is basically figure out how good is the large language model in general producing this kind of programming language, because it could be super great at doing Java code or C++ or JavaScript. But OpenSCAD is more like a very rare things to find on the internet. Compared to the other programming languages, there's definitely less code available. And that's why you need to give it a little more example code and more detailed instructions how to work with this example and how to create the actual thing. But that's what's happening in the background. And then this SCAD file, which is essentially also something that you can download here, is the code for the model. And then it is processed further through OpenSCAD to create, for example, the 3MF file and the CSG file, which can also be imported into FreeCAD, which then can be exported into a step file. What I'm currently also working on is fully automating FreeCAD as a separate tool, basically, to automate also the generation of a step file. But essentially, theoretically, you can go and download the CSG and make it a step file through the process of going through FreeCAD. So I just want to eliminate this step so you can directly get the step file out and import it into any other construction program, even like Fusion 360. But you can also just go and download the 3MF and put it into your slicing program and print the thing, right? Now, of course, everybody will now have the question in their head, how can I get access to this? How can I try this out? I would say the results are currently not that representable yet. So I'm still working out how the examples data set needs to be so we get better results and more, even though for the abstract things, a better variety of results that are more like realistic. But of course, this thing is not meant to be super hyper realistic. It's more like we want at least more improvements in that direction. I would say the pure technical construction, it is already pretty good, but it can also be much better. And that's why I am picking currently a selected group of people, which I will first give access to the tool for free to test it, and are also really working on feedback, because that's super crucial. What I don't need people to just try it out and then never come back to me and say, this is good, this is bad, or this didn't work, this didn't work. I really need very constructive feedback. Also, like what kind of features I would have to implement next, and where are the bugs that I didn't find, and all that. And that requires definitely more dedication and time than just like playing around for fun. And then it wouldn't really help me that much, honestly. One of the next group of people that I will give access to the tool is my Patreons. So watch out for that. If you are a patron already, I will send out a notification to all of the patrons probably by the end of February, beginning of March, somewhere around, because those are my most loyal supporters, and their donations have always helped me to. So thank you, by the way, for being a patron. This is super helpful to run the channel and really fund things. This group, like the patrons, will get access to the tool as well, hopefully also giving me some feedback. That's what I'm hoping for, so that I have an initial very limited amount of people testing the tool and helping me to improve the tool, because I can also just like work with so many people and ask them for feedback, and really also like work with the feedback. So there's always kind of a good sample set of people that is useful, and at some point it gets too much, and that's why I need to limit this. Now, like if I say, how does the rollout of the tool look like? What's the plan? Honestly, I think we're not there yet to tell you exactly when it's going to be available for everyone. And I also need to figure out the funding. And that's an important message that I need to send here, like to also like manage the expectations a bit. I'm not OpenAI, I'm not Microsoft, I'm not Google, so I don't have billions of dollars to run this for free. Specifically, I'm actually paying Amazon in a specific in this specific context, Amazon Web Services, for running the AI model. And that's why it for me, it is not sustainable to give this away for free. So that's why I'm saying, okay, but we have a cohort of people, the Patreons, who are like donating me anyways. And that's hopefully will be good enough to fund the usage for this group of people. Then I have to figure out kind of a funding model for the future, and I have different ideas, right? So first could be we just keep Patreon and use it, and so that's probably the easiest in the beginning, just not to introduce another way of paying, honestly. And the other ideas that I have is like, once I have a better understanding of how much it actually costs on average for a single person, or like if I have 100 people using it, and I will know much better how is the average cost for that group of people. And so I can figure out also like what is sustainable, what's not sustainable. I can imagine that at some point I'm going to figure out maybe, okay, there is a different way how to charge for this. Maybe only if you want to download the file or whatever. That could be an option. But it's rather not decided yet, I would say. So if you have any suggestions, if you have any ideas how you would personally see it, if you would say, this is worth it for me and this is not worth it for me, or this is how I would prefer to pay for this if I get something decent out of it, then let me know. Now, what does it mean for the channel? I think this is the last question that I want to touch this in this video before it gets too long, is really like, what are we doing on the Crosslink channel in the future? I think we're going to talk about this tool, of course, from time to time. I don't want to like spend all the time making videos about it. I will use a short form video to showcase a little bit how the progress looks like. So if you look in my history of videos, you will see a couple of short form videos also on the TikTok channel demonstrating a couple of examples. Also, some of them you've seen here already. I will keep making the usual content, which means we will probably dial down the 3D printer reviews. I think it is something that I will still do. I have a couple of things to do in this domain. We also have a laser engraving machine that I need to test. But I really want to dial down a little bit on the product reviews, because I think it's also not something that I love so much anymore. And I think it's also not adding so much value. I'd rather focus on making projects or creating things with the 3D printers and 3D printing in general. And that could be using the tool here, for example, the CAD 3D, to create objects and then also print those. And I think that's a good combination where I can imagine we're going to be creative and try out different things and print stuff, and also create some projects that we want to 3D print. I have a huge 3D printing project here right on my table, which I didn't finish. And that's probably one of the next videos where we're going to build this and put it all together. But generally, I think it's going to be a balance of 3D printer topics, not too much about that, actually, to be honest, and 3D printing projects, which is something that I really want to focus on. And then also one component that I always wanted to do is kind of electronics and the combination of electronics with 3D printing projects, kind of the intersection between that, not too deep into electronics, but also more like something like Raspberry Pi projects, which are, like I say, less complex, which don't involve custom PCB boards, if that tells you anything. I think that is interesting, of course, but it's probably too much at the moment for me. It's too deep. I'd rather start with something like, okay, let's try out using the Raspberry Pi 500, which is the new all-in-one keyboard Raspberry Pi, and build a 3D printing workstation with all the free software out there. So let's make something like that. So I think this is something that I can imagine is interesting. It combines all of the topics that we have on the channel. It's still kind of still on topic, not too much off topic. And yeah, and then from there, I can imagine that we're striving a little bit left and right into different directions throughout the year. So, but don't want to put myself too much under pressure with that. So really focusing on the CAD 3D app to finish that as best as possible. I mean, it's never going to be finished probably, but to really get something out there to you in your hands as soon as possible so you can try it out. And I think it's going to be fun, right? I personally see it not so much as a product and a huge thing and something super amazing. I think it's more like proof of concept for me. I wanted to learn a lot about AI because of my main job. Right, so that's a perfect combination, honestly. I'm probably also going to talk about this project in my working context as a solutions architect at AWS. So I think this is the perfect intersection of everything. And that's why I was also so enthusiastic, and still am enthusiastic about making this a reality and bringing it into the hand of more people. And it's going to benefit me and hopefully this community also in terms of having more fun with the hobby and having some tool that is hopefully accessible soon to a lot of people. With that, I want to say thank you for watching. Thanks for being loyal to the channel, coming back and listening to this video and listening to my rambling, which was probably a lot. And we're going to definitely go much more in detail about the real, like all of the things, the components in this solution. If you are interested, it's much more technical and much more in depth, also about touching all of the like cloud components and things like large language models and training. If you're interested in that, I'm definitely going to make a video about that. Probably not for everyone, but it is something that I really want to show to you. And with that, I want to say, well, bye-bye. Until we see each other next time on the channel. Have a good time. Stay healthy.